All right.
Good evening and welcome to our March 6th Parks and Rec meeting. It is 5:30 p.m. If we could have a roll call, please, Amber.
Mrs. Cooper?
Here.
Mr. Martin?
Here.
Mr. Neff?
Here.
3 present, we have 4.
Looking for a motion on the minutes from February 7th meeting.
Motion to approve.
I'll second. Motion by Martin, second by Mr. Neff. Any corrections, Mr. Martin?
We have to point it out that it's me, correct?
Yeah.
Well, I know Murray gave you his list,
Oh, okay.
so
Well, under the paragraph about visitors, the third line down, it should say he touched on the amount of people that attend events.
Okay.
And under new business, the second line down, the word released should be past tense, released.
Okay.
And then on the same paragraph, it should be the Ohio Fallen Heroes Memorial that received the money.
Okay.
Other than that, it's perfect.
I will
Okay.
get those
a
corrections.
motion with corrections is on the floor. If we could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
3 yeas.
Seeing no visitors today, not even Mrs. Crawford, we got an empty gallery. We will move on to new and unfinished business, starting, we have Eagle Adventure Camp. I was like, why are we talking about this? But we talked about that at events, so it got bumped up to the Parks Committee. Is there anything you want to say about that, or?
That is exactly right.
Yeah,
So this
so-
has gone through the events committee because it affects one of our parks. The matrix says we bring it to the Parks Board as well. So Amber, tell them a little bit about the adventure camp.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure everybody knows about the adventure
Well,
camp.
the Eagle Adventure Camp is put on by Miss Greiger. She is with the schools. It goes a couple weeks in June and then a few weeks in July. I think just maybe 1 week in July, 2 weeks in July as well. It's a Monday through Friday camp. I think drop off as early as 7 a.m. and then it concludes around 4 p.m. every day. They use GRE Shelter Place as the meeting point, and then they do other events out in the area, but they also utilize the shelter house and the fields for other. They did archery last year. They just do a lot of like events with the kids out there. It happened last year. It went off with no issues. They're very respectful of the space, and I have no problem giving my yes on this.
They don't need any other city resources.
Nope.
Is it the same kids each 3 weeks or is it a different group of kids each time?
It could be the same kid, but each week can be different. Each week is
Okay.
individual, so you pay weekly for it.
So is this gonna be on the agenda tonight in the council meeting?
So this is an item, doesn't go to the council. Basically, if you're comfortable with the use of the park for this particular purpose, it basically stops at this point. So we've got the events committee's approval. We're looking for the Parks Committee support. And then we do also run these, just as a general rule, we do run these by city staff as well, the police department, and our service department, so that they're aware of it. If there are red flags, they identify those for us. And then, although this doesn't involve this, but if an event did involve a street closure, we do additional outreach. Actually, although you probably do outreach to the fire and
Yes.
EMS. And
Fire,
yeah, just so you know, there's a big event going.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good.
So the police will be aware that there'll be 100 kids moving around the city at any given time during that week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like there's no objections.
I don't have any objections. I think it's a great idea.
Yep, and they did this last year. It might sound familiar because it would have gone through the events committee last year. So. Okay, sounds good. Give Mrs. Greiger the okay. Okay, next up, we have a community Easter egg hunt civic association. I have seen this advertised on Facebook, and this is something that has been done annually as well. And I assume this is at GRE again. Is that correct?
Yeah, so before she gets into the details, let me just say, so this is an example though of one where we didn't get the application prior to the events committee. So the general rule is events committee first and then anyone else after that. But there's a provision in our rules that it does allow staff to bring it directly to either this committee or council if it warrants that. And given the fact that this has been a longstanding event in the community, and the next events committee, I think, is right up against this event.
Yeah.
So wanted to make sure we got it in front of the Parks Board. So with that, just a little more.
Well, the main event is on, March 23rd from 11 to 2. And then more information, I think, is going to be posted soon about the schedules for the age groups. They've invited out our police department and our fire department as well, as ACE to come hang out. There'll be some kids entertainment, music, and everything like that. That's about it. And then they didn't really request anything from us except for some cones and some tape to help mark off spaces so they can, but they have me for that. So I will be taking care of that. And this is also another event that the fire, EMS, and city staff have all gone over. It happens every year. Nothing has really changed from the previous years. So yeah.
Will they be going back into that wooded area?
I think
as
the
well?
older
Yeah.
age groups are set to go back there again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they go back and that's where the Easter egg hunt portion is for the older kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I assume, like the last event, this will stop at the Parks Committee. Any objections to a community Easter egg hunt? Nope.
No,
None here either.
they used to do it on the square.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that they have the woods out there to be using this.
They have a lot
I
of
think
space.
it's
They have a
neat.
lot. You remember how many eggs? Do you remember what I saw it on there? I have seen a sign up Genius go around. So if anyone is interested in volunteering that day, they have a lot of needs. And I saw what it was, but it was like thousands of Easter eggs. I mean, it is a lot. It's only gotten bigger. Yeah. Okay. Next up on our agenda is Olentangy Disc Golf a Glow Tournament. Tell us about that.
This is Olentangy Disc Golf Club. They did this event last year. I've gone over it. Everything is pretty much the same as the event that took place last year. It takes place at night, obviously, because they're going to use glow discs. They'll start when the sun starts to set, and then they'll play until then. They do have fees, but it is open to the public. Anybody can sign up for this tournament. And I spoke with Tom West, who will group you with people who play better and then put beginners, and then they'll play around so you can learn how to play. It's a really good group. They do plan to about 80 people. They did update me and let me know if more people than 80 signed up, they would let me know. And I have run it by the police department just because it goes later and parks close. They don't have an issue with it. This group holds a Monday night league right now, and we have had no issues with them being out there past dark playing. So the police, the fire, both see no issues with it. I ran it past services as well, and Jake had no issues with it as well. He gave us go ahead.
Will the police be able to have somebody out there to help with traffic at the end of it? Because all those people trying to leave the park at the same time, pulling out onto Route 61 could be a bit of an issue.
That is definitely something I could loop back with the chief about and see if he has, anything that he wants to add to that. They were pretty good about it last year with directing everybody out, and some of them hang back to clean up the park. So not everybody's leaving at once. The group is very respectful and they go back through and pick up any trash. So hopefully we won't, but I'll follow up with the chief and see if he wants somebody out there.
I think it sounds like a great idea. It just sounds like a lot of fun and stuff.
Yeah, I've gone out to kind of watch for a little bit just to see, and it looks like fun. I wouldn't do it because I trip in the woods, but.
And it looks like they donate some of their money to
Mhm.
the Adkins family charities. I was gonna ask just out of curiosity if it was a fundraiser or if it was just a tournament.
Majority of these are used as fundraisers.
Fundraisers.
Mhm.
So you pay to participate and then that money?
Do we have spectators there too? Or is it just-
You can. I don't know if they have it for this. I can ask and definitely confirm that. I've gone out just to watch and no one's stopped me, so.
How many people, do you play disc golf? How many people play on a team? Or is it just like,
I think this is doubles, so you have two teams.
oh, okay.
at each one.
Next, council retreat, Daryl, I think we need like a disc golf 101.
We have a disc golf commissioner, certified commissioner, don't we, or something like that?
We
Yeah,
might.
Yeah.
Or just write that down in pencil.
Yeah, exactly. I will write that down in pencil. There you go. So maybe not necessarily this event, but I think you raise a good point. So, I mean, last year we definitely were talking with the Parks Committee about trying to activate the parks a little bit
Mhm.
more and see if there was more we could do on the disc golf side. I think in many ways, what we've learned is all of the things that are happening on the disc golf side. It may not be necessarily we've helped activate it, but there has always been a lot going on. So I think we're starting to get a better handle of all of that. If there is one thing that maybe we did activate a little bit, it was that nighttime golf, because that was not something that had been a standard part of the league's play. And we were a little bit, you know, generally the parks are closing at dusk. But I think we did ask them to generally identify with a sign of some sort, so the police department knows that the group that's there is that group. They've got the sign posted and they pick up the sign when they leave, so that if anybody is there sort of outside of those hours, at least police understands, okay, that's not connected to the event. So that seemed to work out pretty well so far this year. So, yeah.
So outside of our parks being closed at night, is there anything else that a group needs to have a tournament at night?
No, I mean,
These gotta be
generally-
some strong glowing, frisbee.
Yeah.
discs, huh?
They probably are.
They're not out there in the pitch black. They bring their lights and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So, but they do turn them off when they're throwing and stuff. I could never.
I don't think it sounds like a beginner's event. You said they can have beginners. I don't think I
They
might
will
sit that one.
probably with somebody that's gonna play.
Oh, very cool. I'm glad that we have that to offer them.
Absolutely. And I think one other thing with it, maybe in terms of what the city's had to provide, I mean, our service department, I think, has just been a little bit more active in trying to get out there. Just make sure that the trash cans are emptied on a more regular basis. Not that they weren't doing it before, but I think they, you know, given how much activity we now know is happening, I think we're doing a better job of
Yes.
getting out there and collecting the trash in a timely fashion. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
And they're well aware that alcohol is not permitted.
They are very well aware.
Yes.
Yes, Miss Swain tells them that
Every
all of the time.
It's
Yes.
starting to sound less fun, but just kidding. Okay,
It's-
moving on. Solar eclipse. Do we have an update or is this still what I heard at events?
So we do have an update. Yeah.
Okay.
So we had a little bit of a technical glitch with our printer today. So we did have a summary document that we were going to share with you, but we'll just share it verbally. So why don't you do that? I'll fill it in.
So as we all know by now, Monday, April 8th is the solar eclipse. We will be hosting the event at Freedom Park. The event will start at 10 a.m. We will start parking everybody, bringing them in. Attendees will receive free eclipse glasses that are available while the supplies last. Right now, we have about 800. We may have more, hopefully. I think the police are gonna assist is what I was just told. So the Lions will be there. They are going to do the table with an activity for kids to make a shield to help protect their eyes that go over the solar eclipse glasses. Grace Church is coming. They're going to bring yard games and they have a couple of adult volunteers that have stepped forward to help us with parking. So we have people in the back and the front. So we're gonna have parking will happen in the back where the disc golf course is. And then Sunbury Nazarene has donated their parking lot for us to use as well. So we'll just fill it in as people come. The the events will probably take place between like 10:30, 11, and then we'll probably start to like close that down closer to the time of totality, because everybody's gonna be. It concludes at 4. And more information will come on this, but there'll be some traffic instructions to follow, just so we can control when everybody's leaving, which directions they go, so we're not clogging up the intersections. The police, fire, and the city have all been working together to make sure that we form a plan to keep everybody safe. So it's gonna be a fun, friendly family event. Bring your picnic baskets, your blankets, your lawn chairs. There's lots of open space to come hang out, play some yard games. And Alyssa and I will have a booth set up for the city as well with our park information and all the updates that we are making with the park, as well as popcorn, hopefully.
Are we gonna have a couple extra Johnny on the spots or something?
Yes, I have 2 more. I have one accessible one and a regular one on order with Wells. So those will be out there as well. So a total of 3.
Yeah, so earlier today, we met with the police department to talk through kind of how to handle the traffic. Maybe if there's an influx at right before the event begins, and by right before, I mean, not really sure what that means. Whether that's right before we open up the park or right before totality begins to happen. They'll also have police there. They'll be on site, I think, just sort of monitoring the activity that's happening, but primarily there to then help for the vehicles to exit the park. So we've worked through that with the police department. I think they have a plan. We will use the messaging board that we've used for other events, the electronic messaging board, to help direct traffic at the end of the event. Police are kind of still working through what that looks like, but again, it depends on how many attendees we have and how much traffic there is as to which direction they'll send them when they leave the park. But they're thinking through that. And then the other thing I was going to add is that they have requested that we schedule a meeting with the fire department and the emergency services group. So we're working on doing that for next week. Not necessarily, although they may participate. We think they might participate. I mean, obviously they'll have a lot of other things that they need to be attentive to that day throughout the county and throughout the district. So
Sorry to interrupt
No.
you, but those 2 screens over there keep blinking off and on.
Little
Something weird's going on.
so are you kicking?
I think I'm having this stroke.
No, I
Yeah,
say
it just-
it.
What did he say?
We're trying to focus.
I understand. So
Murray's
Well,
like,
we're trying not to-
"Zone now."
try not to pick things on our side.
Maybe need the little distraction to focus, so it worked out for him.
It's
Yeah, turn him off, turn it on again.
Yeah. So my understanding is that these TVs are hardwired into the system. These are on Wi-Fi, so that's why they tend to
Oh, glitchy.
act up.
the Wi-Fi wasn't.
And the Wi-Fi wasn't, yeah, that's right. So anyway, so that's what happens next in terms of planning. And then I guess we'll just continue to communicate via social media and other ways on the event itself. So,
And Amber, I assume that because I know that the city's Facebook is pretty active, so I assume that you keep your eye on if other events are going to pop up. And so is that what happens? Like you see like, oh, because I've heard rumblings that the youth sports are going to do something. So youth sports pops up, oh, they're having a big thing at BWE. Do you then just give our police a heads up like, hey, or do they see that? Or how does that work if they don't come to us, but we know they're doing a big event? Like,
Yeah, I mean, a big event on school grounds is something that they should definitely let our police know about. Casey and I work together. Casey does all the social media for the police department. And if we see stuff, we'll send it back and forth. So we
Okay.
we stock Facebook and.
yeah, I haven't seen anything on Facebook about anything yet, but I've heard,
Mhm.
I want to do this, I want to do that, and, or whatever, so. Cause I mean, the police will just have a lot to do that day anyway, but it would be helpful for them, I guess, if they knew like, oh, in addition to this big city event, this church or this group or this whatever.
So far, I haven't seen anything like that.
Okay.
So I think.
All right, I haven't either. I've just heard, but we'll see.
Do we have an idea, is the total of people who may or expected attendance?
I don't. I've been, like, personally, I've been asked about it by like 30 people. But school's out that day. Big Walnut made that announcement. I think that might change a couple of people's plans on what they're doing that day. I know there's a group of high school students that are already planning to come out. So I think as
It's
we
hard to
share,
plan, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
we're not
hard
asking for
to-
RSVPs.
I would say probably 300. I would like to see more, but I'm gonna guess 300.
And one of the other reasons to meet with the fire department and EMS is I do think we want to get an understanding of how many people they think is too many. So we're monitoring,
Sure.
within the size of the space that we're in. So if we bump up against whatever that number is, we will have a contingency plan in place to close the park. But yeah, I don't think we know the number, but
You couldn't,
we,
I don't think you'll get up to 4,000 people.
Yeah. well, and that's one of the points that I have in the manager's report for the council is that we're on the southern end of the path, if you will. We actually have one of the shortest durations of totality in Delaware County. So I doubt we are like a high value location per se. So I think our thought is that it's probably likely to be locals who maybe just kind of want to get out in a place where it's a little bit more open and they
Yeah.
might get a better view. So, but time will tell, I guess. So
We'll
when we
learn
say,
and make changes in another 200 years when it comes back.
there you go. Well,
Just take good notes, Amber.
Alyssa, I was just gonna say, Alyssa is a great note taker and we'll be documenting this for 200 years from now when it happens again.
I'll
Right?
bury it in a time capsule. They'll just dig it up and see all the minutes.
Okay, as a side note, Alyssa was doing some research on the old council records. Personally reading through the 1870s and whatever council minutes. So I think she really truly understands the value of well-written, easy to read, concise notes. So she's gonna be on top of that.
Gosh, they were probably all like in like cursive and.
Oh, yeah.
They were.
Yeah.
Some of it was, you couldn't even read it.
Yeah.
Could not make out any of the words.
Yeah, oh gosh. Okay.
So that's the
um,
update on the eclipse
Okay,
planning.
sounds good. Other park updates, monthly park update. I
So
saw
there
some.
haven't been too many updates. Yeah, for Freedom Park, we just always talked about the solar eclipse. J.R. Smith, so the state capital budget application is completed. We still have to edit it and everything, but now we're more focused on gathering supplemental information to support our application. And we're also working on inviting Senator Brenner out for a site visit. Old Church parking lot, the EV charging stations received software updates and new parts and are now back in service. Old Orchard Park, so I received the report / evaluation from Aaron Noblet, which is also in the parks packet. So he went out and tagged the trees that are viable and ones that need to be removed. So there are about 7 green tags out there and 10 red tags. And kind of our next steps for that would be determining how the committee wants to proceed with that. The reservoir construction is still ongoing, and there is no update for the Sunbury Memorial Park. So.
Right, so it looks like we're gonna have a little bit of time, so we moved this down on the agenda. Just didn't really know how long it would take to get through the other items, the Old Orchard Park report. So if unless there's anything else, maybe we can dig into this just a little bit more, begin to get let you know what we heard from the arborist, and a little bit more detail in terms of what the next steps could be, if that's where the Parks Board wants to go. So
Yes, please. I was just gonna say, well, what are we gonna do with these red tags and green tags?
there you go.
What does Mr. Noblet suggest?
So he went through and identified the different species that are out there, not just the apple trees, but any invasive species that may have come into the area of interest. He also provided a preliminary drawing of what the path would look like that's in the center of the trail. And just kind of like, just basically a circle with two entrance points.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's a little hard to see in your packet, but it is on packet page 34. It's the lower image.
Mhm.
And again, there's a couple of points at which it could potentially access the existing trail. And he's suggesting kind of a round or whatever, kind of a circular path, I guess, which could go around these trees. This location is the area where, again, he's identified, we've got probably a fair number of viable apple trees. Not all of them are viable, but some of them are viable. And there's actually already, although it doesn't really show in this image, you were out there with him.
Mhm.
It does kind of open up a little bit in this area as well.
Yeah, so in the top image on page 34, you can kind of see the entrance a little bit where the grass is kind of split into like kind of a makeshift pathway. In the center of that, there's about 4 trees where it like really opens up. I believe one of those is tagged red, but the other 3 are tagged green. So that would be the primary area where the circle of the path would be.
Like around the viable trees?
Yes.
So the viable trees would be in the middle of
Mhm.
them. Or is he talking like a paved path or like just like a?
So he recommended mulch just to kind of help with the trees, or gravel, definitely not paved because that could like,
Right, that's
With
what I was
the
like,
growth and
what is this, what, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, I would also say, I mean, we really haven't studied, what the requirements might be. ADA requirements might be associated with that, given it's a city trail, a public trail.
Mhm.
But so, I mean, we can definitely kind of, as we keep moving forward, we can sort.
And this
through
was his,
that way.
like, this was just his suggestion.
Yeah, so after we had, at the last meeting, I think still got the impression you wanted us to proceed with this. Alyssa had scheduled time with Mr. Noblet to go out there, and again, these sort of his general thoughts on the trees, the quality, the location, what have you, but the details of a trail, we didn't ask him to, tell us the materials, whatever.
Right.
And then he just provided some native wild trees that we could plant. Grapevines on page 36, that's a huge, not huge, but that's a big issue over there. There's a bunch of them that would need to be cut down. And then he also identified the invasive species that are also in that area as well. And some local companies that specialize in large scale removal, if we want to go that route. But some of the dead trees do pose a risk to falling on the trail and potentially hazardous.
Yeah, and maybe on that point, I will just say, I know Dan and I and Mr. Ghost and Ironside, I mean, there were a lot of us who walked this trail multiple times to identify where well, I was more involved in kind of the second phase, but even the first phase itself. What I will say is this, when we were looking at the path for where the current trail is, there was a lot of discussion about not taking down trees. So when he suggests, though, that there are some dead trees that are still there that we probably need to take care of, I mean, that's probably a really valid point. But again, I think we were trying to err on the side of saving as many trees as possible until we got kind of to this point where, now we've got a maintenance issue that we may that we need to take care of at some point. So.
And do those trees, those dead trees, do they align then with the circle that he drew?
Well, I think he's referencing just as he went down the trail. So this is kind of in addition to the orchard kind of concept. He's identified that there are some dead
It's just
trees
so
along the trail.
dangerous.
Yeah, that we need to probably be cleaning up too.
Yeah, there are some around the circle and at the 2 entrance points, so kind of along them. But I think there were some along the trail as well.
Did we
Those were
go
the
through
primary.
something similar a couple of years ago with the GRE? With the woods that are behind
Yeah,
GRE?
we did. Yeah. He went through and cleaned up a lot of area out there where there were dead things and things that were dying and branches up
An
ready to
invasive.
fall. And yeah, and creeping up on the path, there were a whole lot of things that he addressed when he went out there. So, but that's been a few years ago, yeah.
Yeah, there's an image in the packet actually that shows some tree planting over at Rosecrans Park. I don't know if that was in connection to when he helped us identify the maintenance issues, but
Yeah.
but yeah, there definitely has been some activity out there, definitely in getting rid of the invasive trees. I can't remember. There may have been some pear tree issues too, now that I think about it, but
Wonder what the size difference, how much bigger this area is than that area over at GRE.
It's probably a bit smaller.
Oh, you think this is smaller?
Bit smaller, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, quite a bit smaller.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Well,
Johnny Appleseed.
So there's really no way to know for sure if Johnny Appleseed planted them, but he did include a tool that we could use to kind of get an estimate of how old the trees are, the apple trees are. So possibly. And then he just include a management summary of kind of just brief overview of what we would need to do.
So I think we probably ought to figure out, what the cost associated with testing a tree might be. I think people are interested. I know Mr. Piles, before he left, this was one of the things that he had said to me that, was on his list that never got to. If at the end of the day, we can determine that they are roughly around the same time as Johnny Appleseed, we could probably build some kind of community event around it. But if we determine they're, 1850, I mean, well, then it's Abraham Lincoln, right? Anyway, I think it's like I said, I think it's a good suggestion. I assume you want us to kind of check that out. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's better to have the mythology of Johnny Appleseed than the actual.
so what kind of direction, besides that, what kind of direction are we looking for? Are we looking for, should we continue going down this path with and budget for, because we don't have a super big parks budget, right?
Do not.
And we're
That's right.
trying to,
Yeah, I think, well, one, I think one, we've learned a lot about what's happening over there. And I think we probably learned that, we could do something at a relatively low cost if we were to kind of limit it to this area that Aaron's helped us identify. What we do also know is that we've got community groups that have often asked us to do community projects. And I think with a little bit more now, the more knowledge we have here now, I mean, it might help inform us to, or suggest that could be a community project to help do some of the clearing in and around that area. I assume the committee's still generally enthusiastic about the direction we're headed, and
I'm just
like it. You
curious
think
how,
it's-
I'm trying to remember, I guess we could just have to look back at our notes, like how we pay, how much it costs us to clear up the GRE site. And did Aaron do all of that? And are we looking at more work, even smaller space, but are we looking at more work?
And I don't remember how much it cost us. I'm sitting here thinking, wouldn't that be a cool place to bring a chainsaw artist? If we can find some relation to Johnny Appleseed,
Mhm.
that he could do some chainsaw artwork on a couple of those big trees that need to go. There's some possibilities there,
Mhm.
because it draws people in, they want to see stuff like that,
I wonder, I'm sure there's a difference, but I wonder if there's a difference between sawing into the ice blocks that we have at the Christmas on the Square and sawing into wood. I think it's that.
The same people do,
Do they do wood
yeah.
carvings
I
too?
mean, that's Johnny Appleseed out on the square,
Yeah, they did that.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the GRE cleanup, we can probably, because I agree, I think it's been within the last couple of years. Let us do a little bit of research and see if we can find the costs associated with that. I don't remember if Aaron did it all.
And so I'm just curious, like I just would like a refresher
Yeah.
on what did we do then? What was the scope of it? Who did the work? My brother always calls me during council. I think he does it on purpose. And then just a comparison to what we're looking at doing
Yeah.
now, work scope, and if, is this something Aaron's comfortable doing, or is this something that we need to look?
Right.
I'm just a little more information.
even if
I'm
you-
all for it. I'm just,
Even if he's not comfortable doing it,
he,
he knows somebody that would be good at it.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, that's the other, because he's been in that industry for a long time,
yeah,
so, yeah.
yeah. Okay,
All right, we'll pull the file on that. At least get the estimate available, find out who did the work and go from there. And we'll talk to him a little bit more about how to test the tree, test the age of the tree. Because if, like you said, Mr. Martin, if we can kind of date it back to that era, then, you know, that might kind of guide us in terms of then, okay, what do we do with the large trees? Is this really going to be a place that we can create some, you know, some sort of,
Some interest.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. So, okay.
does that, that doesn't directly tie into the path that goes behind the communities, does it? The path that is already there, or
So,
that will go. It doesn't go into anything. It's just a little circle around in that little area.
well, it is, but then it heads, it continues south. The northern leg, the northern portion, or the western portion of it continues south and it turns and follows.
Right, and goes out to
Yeah.
Granville Street.
But it turns, yeah, that portion does, but there's a portion to the back that turns right and heads over to Sunbury Meadows Drive.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I was
yeah,
curious about.
but I don't think it connects directly to a trail like communities. I think you have to kind of head down Sunbury Meadows a little
The
bit.
sidewalk over there, and
Yes.
then you get on the sidewalk and head south.
Yeah,
Okay,
And then
but you can get from
Yeah.
one to the other,
Yeah,
via a
I
sidewalk.
was just curious, because if they connected.
Yeah.
well, we're hoping one day they will connect.
Yeah. Me too. Okay.
Well, and keep in mind, you know, we're getting pretty close to the Sunbury Commerce Park, breaking ground over there as well. So all of this starting to, you know, a lot of activity, I guess, going on
Yeah.
over in this area. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, and more people coming in and
Yep.
eventually maybe some commercial right there, so.
right.
Okay,
Okay.
makes sense.
All right. I think we know what to do next there.
Anything else from the committee for parks this evening?
Well, we would just share, I think, one other item from, here you share it.
This is from the Girl Scout troop that came to one of the parks meetings. It says, "Dear members of the Sunbury Parks Commission, we wanted to thank you for having us at your meeting. It was such a great experience and we learned so much about all of the wonderful parks you have planned for our community. You make Sunbury a very fun and special place to live. With love, troop number 4803. And then Penelope and Avery signed it as well and included a photo.
Yeah.
I just really.
Keep up the good work.
That was a
note
totally
of
different
that.
committee, but.
That's okay. Yeah, we take it. All right. Well, we've got just a couple more minutes. Maybe Dan, if you just give a high level with respect to a trail, we'll do a deeper a more detailed presentation of the services committee, but this does affect a trail and you might be interested. So tell them what's going on with our Legacy Park Trail.
Okay. Coming off guard. Well, just because I had this long presentation prepared.
See, Mr. Neff, everybody has to stay awake during the Parks Committee, everybody.
The trails at Magnolia and Price Ponds, including Legacy, have been challenging, interesting. Because of weather, wetlands, physical conditions and other such things. I've finally gotten to the point where they're kind of coming to fruition. The Legacy Trail, which goes from, well, through Price Ponds and up around south of Fairland and connects in over behind or beside General Rosecrans, has been an issue because of the poor soils and wetland conditions there, as well as some floodplain, and they've struggled with it. We've had some interesting discussions with them. It should have been built by now and is not. And probably good that it hasn't been built because the conditions have been so bad. But they've come up with a way to build it that's they'll build it by building up a higher base out of rock and then put a lot of drainage pipes in to allow the water to go from one side to the other and allow that subgrade to dry out and then pave it after it's stabilized. And so they're in the process of doing that right now. A nice, well thought out process, doing it slowly, thinking where the drainage goes. There is one area where they're gonna have to connect to a storm system. So in the process of doing that, they had to, and Magnolia Park itself, they had to make some changes to the trail, to the trails that go through the green space areas because of an overabundance of wetlands that were larger than they thought they were. So they made some changes to that. That affected their ability to connect from Magnolia Park to the Legacy Trail and Magnolia Park to Price Ponds. And I don't have the exhibit, but the way they're connecting is going to require them, and there was no way around it really, to go through a wetland area across a floodway, which is illegal it's illegal to go through there and put fill in it. So they have to build a small, very small bridge. It'll be a timber bridge, so it's sort of like a timber decking bridge that you see. Worthington has some. There's some out. Preservation Parks has several that will cross on the northern end of Legacy Trail coming out of Magnolia. It'll be a nice feature, something unique. But if you stick around for services, I can show you a rendering of it or my own rendering of it. I have engineering plans. I colored it up, sort of a little cartoony picture. But anyway, so that'll be happening, and so this will all be coming together here this spring, and by summertime it should be complete. Not sure when the paving will get done. That'll depend on how much rain we get, but by the end of the summer, hopefully it'll all be complete and it'll come together. And there's a couple other smaller little aspects like the connection to Big Walnut Intermediate School from Price Ponds at the end of Ping, or at the sort of the intermediate portion of Ping, the end of section 1. And then there's a connection where on Weatherby, where for some reason they didn't connect near the parking lot into the school area. It's all gravel there, and I'm not sure why they made that connection. They haven't gotten back with me, and I realized today as I was going through all of my trail emails and correspondence. But so there's a lot of things going on with the trails. I just kind of want to give you an update and let you know it is happening. Is that presentation in the packet?
We've got it on. We can put it on the OneDrive for the Parks Board, so you can see it. It's in the packet for the services committee members. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I'm sort of frazzled on it because I was thinking of it from a presentation type of viewpoint. But if you had a chance to look at the presentation and then you have some questions, I'd be happy to go over them with you and review it with you.
It sounds like the location of where we're putting them at that's been difficult.
It's been difficult because of the physical nature of what's out there. It's
right.
not what they
So
thought.
not something that necessarily would happen again somewhere else.
Correct.
But in this location, it's been difficult. And so we're working through it to make it happen, and it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I can't necessarily say it's been the developer's fault. I think they've gone slow, but they've gone slow for a good reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we're waiting on trails and such like this, it's your responsibility with the communication.
Say that again.
Are you the one that's monitoring
Yes. Yes,
Got a lot to do, Dan.
just a little bit.
You should focus.
Who, on these trails that go through all the neighborhoods, who maintains most, the HOA or is the city?
Both.
Yes,
Yes,
The
Ian.
answer is yes.
the answer is yes.
And that's a very good point that a lot of cities ignore. They'll put, I mean, it's kind of like stormwater. People will put in these trails and don't think about the fact that they need to be maintained, and they do actually wear out pretty quickly because of usually they're under trees, they get a lot of rainfall, they don't get a lot of sun, so they don't dry out and they decay pretty quickly. They do need a lot of maintenance, and a lot of communities ignore them. And if you don't pay good attention to them, they'll deteriorate pretty rapidly. So that's very important that communities have a budget to maintain them.
Yeah, so maybe adding on to that, I mean, if it's sitting in the HOA property, I mean, that generally is a responsibility of the subdivision in the HOA. But the ones we're talking about down here in Old Orchard Park, the Legacy Park, I mean, that he's talking about, I mean, that's on city property when all's said and done. So those will be our responsibility. And so that's, I think, also one of the reasons why we want to keep council advised of how this trail is changing a little bit, because the maintenance on this trail is going to be probably more, well, not probably, it will be more expensive than maybe we envisioned when it was first approved. And with the boardwalks, it just creates a little bit more maintenance. Not to say that we're not going to do it. We're going to do it because it's an important priority to connect communities together. But yeah,
Especially when you have that school right there.
right, exactly.
I think we're fortunate to have, Pulte does have a good contractor involved with that trail, Legacy
Mhm.
Trail, so I think we're fortunate from that perspective. He understands the proper construction of a trail, so that's a good thing.
All right,
Thank you.
that's it.
Anything else from staff? I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
3 yeas, we are adjourned.
Thank you. We'll be back.